It's it's Mesonet. Thanks for clarifying that. I wasn't going to correct him, but
I thought maybe I was pronouncing it wrong. We have one very close.
do ya? Awesome. Where you at?
North of Bluedale.
Yep. Ludell 3 North, I believe. Um, Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Chip. I work at K-State. Thanks for the opportunity to come out to beautiful Northwest Kansas. I love it out here. I mean, Manhattan is not a bad place to be, but I don't know, I just feel like you can breathe air out here. And you can actually see the sky, too, and there's less traffic, and it's beautiful. You guys really live in an amazing place. I'm a meteorologist. I talk climatology. I run the Kansas Mesonet. I do Kansas Forest Service fire stuff. So I do everything fire and weather related for the most part. So today we'll focus on a little bit of an outlook and kind of look into the future and hopefully be right. Meteorologists are always right. We just get paid. We get paid less than doctors, and they bury their mistakes. So don't hate on meteorologists. And you know, I could go into other industries as well, but we'll stick to those two. So you can't look at the upcoming forecast without considering what's happened in the past. And I won't spend too much time on it, but we did have a lot of drought and we had a lot of fire in 2022. But you know, 2022 didn't have floods. That's a positive thing. There were a couple areas of isolated, localized flooding, but that's good. We didn't have much severe weather, which is another big bonus, and we also didn't have any volcanoes. So we're doing all right in Kansas-wise. There's a couple things we can always bank on. Tsunamis. We didn't have any of those in 2022. So, you know, when we talk about drought and the risks that come with drought, it's depressing, right? It's a struggle, it's frustrating, and it can really nag on you after a while, but focus on some positive things. We have a lot of things in central Kansas we don't have to worry about. We don't have to worry about slipping in the Pacific Ocean like California. Anyways, so I will talk about the Mesonet on and off throughout this, and if you guys haven't ever been on the Mesonet, which I hope you all have, and I know there's a couple Nebraska folks and Colorado folks. You got the COAG Met in Colorado, and you got Nebraska Mesonet. That's the website on the pencils I handed out. The website's on there. Feel free to pull it up and play with it as I talk. Unless you fall asleep, then I'll pull out your phone and pull it up for you. So when you wake up, you're at the right place. So the first thing, I pulled Ludell's precipitation from the last 365 days. So Rawlins County. It's pretty obvious, right? We've got a huge departure from normal, about 10 inches or so for the last 365 days. And really the driest period is in the fall. But man, look at the winter. I mean, we had precipitation in the winter. It doesn't, you know, in the grand scheme of things, not a whole lot, but that's good. That's our driest time of the year. And we're getting moisture. Granted, it's snow and difficult to drive and shuts things down, but moisture is moisture. If we look at the rest of the state, y'all are in this nice little island up here. Ludell's actually got 1.7 inches over the last 30 days of moisture. That's pretty darn impressive. Even Manhattan, around Manhattan, we haven't even gotten that much. But we are also in another island out here. But really positive precipitation over the last 30 days that is not typical for this time of year. In fact, that's over 1 inch above normal for the last 30 days. That's doing really good. And when we look at last year, we didn't have that, right? January was dry. It was colder, but it wasn't as windy and warm as December was. So we have had some big improvements from last year already. Granted, you know, the growing season was a whole different story, but we look at just this year compared to last year, we're in a much better place already. So there's positivity in that. And really the whole state, for the most part, except for the Oklahoma border. And then if we look at the last 365 days, that's where we see the big problem, right? We still have prevalent drought. We're not going to make up 10 inches of rain in the winter. If we do, we got bigger problems because there'll be snow as tall as the houses out here. But it's really interesting, too, to see this cutoff right there in Cheyenne County. And if you look at the drought monitor, it reflects that. And there is definitely some more precipitation that's fallen to the west. So a unique cutoff, and we'll talk a little bit more about the cutoffs here in a second. So I want to walk you through the last few months. And this is important when we look at the future because we've got moisture on the ground now that we didn't have before. So this is October. We didn't have any moisture across central part of the state. We were, or central part of the U.S., 0 to 10% of normal for October. We move into November, though. We had a ton of moisture in eastern Kansas and the southern plains. That might not seem important to you, but where's our moisture come from? The southwest, but really the southeast. The main moisture source for the entire central plains is the Gulf of Mexico. That moisture's got to move north and move west and move up into the plains. And if we have really dry conditions down here, it's really hard for that moisture to move that far north. So November was a really interesting month that I think is going to play a big role as we move forward into spring of helping a positive feedback a little bit and get some moisture northward. We kind of saw that actually in December where we had that first big system that went from Denver and northward, and that helped develop that cutoff there in the northwest. We still had scattered areas of above normal moisture down here. So that moisture was able to get transported northward. And we had more like a spring-like system in December. That was multiple events, actually. If we look at the forecast, too, so the top here is the forecast for October, November, December. So the seasonal forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. They had us at above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation. This is the verification. Have you guys ever looked at it? You could go back and look at the climate prediction outlooks, and you can verify if they were right or not. So you can see if the meteorologists were right. And we still get paid. But look at that big difference. We blew that forecast that 3-month period. We were colder than normal. And a lot of that was skewed by December, right? We had that week of really, really cold temperatures. But November was also much below normal. Or not much, but it was below normal. And so we've already been wrong this winter, which is really interesting. And we look at precipitation, it's a little more scattered, but really focused on temperatures. This is the outlook for January that was issued at the end of December. And we were above normal, or expected to be above normal. We're on the cutoff of equal chances. And then above normal precipitation was expected to our north. That's what happened with the precipitation. 400% plus of normal in central Nebraska down into the Front Range, including northwest Kansas. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. You guys got your snow. You're lucky. If you look at snow, though, this area is sitting right about 15 inches of snow for the year. Anyone guess what our average snowfall is for winter to date? 15 inches. You are average snowfall so far this year, which is, it feels like a lot more because we haven't had a ton of snow the last few winters. But we're sitting at average, obviously less as you get further south and east. But precipitation, we'll take it any way we can get it, and we'll definitely take that above normal. But really focus on what that pattern was, too. We had a really, it's called more of what do they call that, atmospheric river event that reached the western U.S. to hit California and just dumped tons of moisture. That extended well into the Central Plains. And what happened was that kept persistent low pressure here. And low pressure, the air goes like that, anticyclonically around it. And guess what that does? That sucks moisture from the Gulf of Mexico up into the plains. That helped us get our moisture. So November already paid back and is already benefiting us. But that was kind of a break in the pattern. Our typical flow, right now we have a La Nina pattern. I'm sure you all have heard it. It's been beaten like a dead horse. La Nina focuses on the water temperatures in the eastern Pacific by the equator. So we're in a La Nina. We've been in a La Nina the last 2 winters. We're in our 3rd year of La Nina, and this is only the 3rd time it's ever happened since the 50s, which is where data started. So we have a very small sample size, but that pattern bucked that trend significantly. We typically see that jet stream dip down. It brings cooler air, typically drier air, into the central plains because we have no bodies of water up here, and leaves the northwest wet and the southeast warm and dry. Well, that obviously didn't happen, right? Well, almost went back. That obviously didn't happen the last few weeks with that atmospheric river event. But if we go back before that event in December, we had that really cold snap. strong northwest flow. We had cold air building up here, was classic La Nina. And when that system, there are other things at play, but when that system came through, really a typical La Nina type pattern. So we had that brief break. What's going to happen? Well, we're probably going to transition back to a La Nina look. And so this is the outlook for La Nina. It's expected to go towards neutral conditions by March, April, May. And this is El Nino up here. So some of the models even have it switching completely and going to an El Nino, which hasn't happened in 3 years. So, will that happen? I don't know. Because look at this. This is the 2 winters ago. It was forecasted to go up to neutral, but no, it stayed down. And then this is last winter. It was forecasted to go towards neutral. No, it stayed down too. Forecast models are wrong as well. They don't get paid anything. But but all the models are in that neutral condition and gives us pretty good confidence that we will see La Nina diminish. Celebrate, yay, yay, guys, yay. It could still go wrong, and I'm a little less confident than normal, but there's some other things at play too. What happens when we keep La Nina into the early spring, late winter, January, February, March? We see those cold extremes in the northern part of the U.S. That's pretty, what we just looked at, right? We saw colder than normal temperatures. We also see this red, bad. That's an increased likelihood of dry extremes in January, February, and March. Well, we had a lot of moisture the last couple weeks. So if that was a buck in the trend and we're kind of sliding back towards that trend, we're going to start seeing dryness emerging and cooler than normal temperatures. There is this whole other component, though, of recent snow. And I'll tell you what, snow is one of those things that could completely mess up a forecast, a seasonal forecast even. Right now, you guys have had multiple snow events. You even had some like light freezing drizzle, and you've had some light melt and refreeze. You've got a pretty darn good snowpack out there that's going to take a lot of energy to melt. Because it's mainly ice, really. It's not just snow anymore. You can't make a snowball out of it. Models don't like to melt snow. It's very, very challenging. And with snowpack, for pretty much all the northern plains, the western U.S. is doing pretty well, except for maybe the far northwest, or they have a little bit below normal. What does snow do to the air above it? Does it warm it? It cools it, right? Isn't that like what an iceberg does to the air and the water does to the air? So it cools that air. So basically, it's harder to get above normal temperatures because, well, we got a snowpack now. And so that plays into keeping below normal temperatures, especially for where that snowpack, really, this stuff here will melt pretty quick. The edge is really right along in there, the heaviest, or not heaviest, deepest snow. And so there and northward, I would say favor for below normal temperatures until you can get rid of your snow. And models don't handle that well. So here's a forecast. This is the forecast for next week. The purple is up to 20 degrees below normal. This is a 5-day average. So it's obviously going to get colder. We're all aware of that as we get into February. It's going to get colder because we're going to switch back to that La Nina look where we're bringing that air up and over and down into the central U.S. This is in a few weeks. This is mid-February here. And we can see that it's trying to retreat that cold air. But look, it's keeping all that cold air in the north. So models are already picking up a little bit that it's going to be below normal. But just like December, we had this cold air built up to the north. And all we had to do is get one system to bring it down in. So we're not done with the below normal temperatures. It's building up there, and it's going to keep building. And we're going to have many more opportunities for cold periods as we move into the later parts of winter. More than normal. So when we talked about cold, and Aaron mentioned it, is we do have an animal comfort. So if you go to that website that's on the pencil, and you go to the menu that's in the top left, you guys just all close your eyes and put this into memory. The menu's in the top left. There's 3 bars. You click that. You go to agriculture, animal comfort. And you can pull up the current animal comfort index that you have. And you can also look at the last 7 days as well. Or you can scan that QR code. We are working on a forecast product that is close, but not there enough to share with you. that uses the Weather Service forecast. And so you'll be able to look out 7 days to see what the forecasted animal comfort is. And I cannot wait to get that out. It cannot come out soon enough. Unfortunately, we probably won't capture it for winter, but as you get into summer, I think you'll have that product available to y'all. There's a whole other component, though, to this cold. That's this nice little media catch term of the polar vortex. Not a train. I always think of the Polar Express. That's not it. It's the polar vortex. What that is this dome, basically a jet stream, right? The jet stream flows around the Earth in cold air up north, warm air down south. Well, when that jet stream is really strong, that polar vortex is really strong, it keeps that cold air up north, up in the Arctic. When that cold air gets weak, though, we start to get big deviations, big troughs and dips in the jet stream, which are great for big, strong, potent storm systems, which like we just had a couple of them. But mainly December was a polar vortex lobe, essentially. Well, that was the December event. You can see how negative it is, so it's really weak. And we've been kind of hovering there, but the projection is to keep negative trends all the way into March, which would once again play into keeping below normal temperatures to be dominant, which would also play into keeping northwest flow across the Central Plains, which would keep us dry. We look at the models out. This is February. Temperature on the left. Hey, look, below normal temperatures. Shocker. And pretty much Kansas is right on the below normal precipitation to near normal, and we're right on that gradient. So a little ebb and flow can go a long ways, but as long as that cold air is realized, we'll likely be dry. It'll favor moisture to the south and east, so you'll see a lot of systems I'm expecting in southeast Kansas that are going to dump rain, and I wouldn't be surprised if they slide into flooding here before the end of March at least. We'll go into March, same thing, right? No difference. Classic La Nina look. You add in that weak polar vortex, we're just playing right into that weather. And when we weaken La Nina in the spring, we tend to play into a really active storm pattern that isn't good for a couple of reasons. And I should have had this slide earlier, but when you look at this Climate Prediction Center outlook, I put a star there in northwest Kansas. This is the temperature one. It's a pie chart. So we have a 34% of equal chances of near normal temperatures, and we still have a 33% of above normal and a 33% of below normal. So it's not saying we won't get above or below. It's just saying that near normal is favored just a teensy bit more. Basically, that's a CYA right there, right? And precipitation. Yeah, I know it, right? Statistics. But my forecast, I think I got this nailed down. We'll see. They're a little bit more on the iffy side, but I'm pretty confident we'll be below normal temperatures. You'll see this get extended out. The new, I think tomorrow. No, the new outlooks come out. Yeah, but the first of the month. And the same thing goes with precipitation. So I think this is wrong. I think we'll see below normal temperatures reach into the Central Plains, and below normal precipitation will reach further into the plains as well. So I think you could favor those as we get into spring for sure, and maybe potentially even early summer. One last little fly in the ointment you might hear about, and that's why I bring it up, is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. The PDO, fancy word for basically we've got really cold water in the central northern Pacific and warm water all along the coast. What that does is that implies a trough of low pressure there and a high pressure curve there, which if you remember, La Nina is this, right? Whee! Brings that cold air from northwest Canada down into the U.S. So when La Nina and the PDO the PDO is negative, they play into each other, which really re-emphasizes the fact that below normal temperatures and below normal precipitation are likely favored through the rest of the winter. And what the PDO is called decadal oscillation. It's a 10-year oscillation, and we're on that tail end of 10 years. So when that does go away, we typically see La Nina flip, and we typically get more precipitation in the state. So we have to hope that the PDO can flip, that the La Nina can go into neutral, and that we can get all the rain we can get. So when La Nina does weaken, we do see a big increase in severe weather across the plains. This is El Nino. The red is negative, so we get less hailstorm activity in the plains, and we get less tornado activity, especially favoring further south and east. But notice all of Kansas is basically highlighted. When we have a La Nina and we diminish away from a La Nina, we are favored for above normal tornado activity and above normal hail activity, because we get more storm systems through here when the La Nina weakens. I didn't touch it that time. I promise. But so that La Nina weakening definitely favors an enhanced storm track this spring, which hopefully will break that trend to dry conditions as we get into the. So the summer forecast is above normal temperatures and a CYA for equal chances for precipitation, because really when we get into summer, if you're under the right thunderstorm 2 or 3 times, you're the winner, right? Convective precipitation is so hard to predict. It's so isolated. It can be so heavy that it's very, very challenging. But temperatures, we see above normal temperatures really average from late spring into summer every year, no matter what. We usually see that in the low temperatures. And things that play into is, that's why we're starting to see some invasive weeds survive. We're starting to see like armadillo activity further north and west, and all those things that can overwinter better is because of our average overnight low temperatures are warming. So that's been a pretty consistent trend every year, and pretty much an easy go-getter of saying it's going to be warmer than normal. But if we trend towards El Nino, like the models say we will, our temperatures are a little bit different. There's a higher probability of cold extremes, and this is July, August, and September, when we're under an El Nino. We also have an increased chance of wet extremes. I ain't saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying is something to keep in the back of your head. That the potential is there that we go from one extreme potentially to another if we can get into that El Nino, which the models are starting to hint at a little bit. It's hard to do that. Typically we get to El Nino in the fall, because fall is usually when El Nino or La Nina emerge. But just something to think about. The bad news is we got drought, and it takes a lot to get rid of drought. Drought is expected to persist through the spring, through at least April. This is released in January. You can see drought persisting through most of it, except for the Manhattan Donut Hole. That's the chip donut hole. It just keeps raining. Man, anytime there's a chance of moisture, it just rains. How much do I need? I mean, I've been eating lots of beans. Does that help? But one thing I want to consider is that drought right now in the state, we're above 38% of the state in exceptional drought. The last time we had that much was back in 2012, late 2012. It took 5 years to erode drought across Kansas. So put that in perspective, we can get average precipitation and still not get rid of drought. Right now we got average snowfall out there. We haven't got rid of drought. We've improved drought a little bit. We haven't gotten rid of it. And drought will likely persist into the summer, no matter what precipitation outcome we get right now, unless you absolutely go to a tsunami. Or not a tsunami, but you know what I mean, a deluge. And then I also want you to think about drought and how we measure drought. If you go back and look, there are, in scholarly documents that are so perfect, there are over 150 definitions of drought in the state of Kansas. 150 different definitions. So what is drought? Well, we have to look at the precipitation deficits, but a lot of it's impact driven. So we need to see above normal crop production. We need to see better hay production. We need to see those creeks flowing, ponds are all full. We need to see those impacts before we truly erode drought. So think about that. There's been a lot of people complaining drought monitor's not representative of me this year, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Show me some impacts. Show me your ponds dried up. And there's a way you can do that, and I'll show you here in a second. So to summarize, that snow gradient is going to be a pain in the tuchus to predict with temperatures. And I think it's going to favor and definitely influence your weather through February. most likely, and potentially into March if you keep it that long. And I think you probably will with below normal temperatures. So cooler and drier is definitely favored through early spring. Here's something to think about. A lot of this area never saw green grass last year. Well, you got enough moisture out there right now that unless it gets so dry and so warm that you melt it all off and evaporate it all out of the ground, which is very unlikely because that moisture is seeping down in, guess what? You'll probably get some grass next year, which is a good thing for cattle folks, right? Last I knew, green grass is good grass. Just making sure you're awake. Okay. So green up will likely occur, and potentially could occur sooner than normal too, because if we get enough warmer air in here, we got the moisture in the ground now. That's usually the ingredient that's missing. Expect it early, storm track in the spring, especially severe weather. Up this neck of the woods could still have a lot of fire weather concerns. I'm a fire weather meteorologist. I know a lot about it. I love fire. Fire's a ton of fun. I haven't burned my house down yet. But there's definitely, we could have this moisture, the snowpack can melt off, and we can get fire really, really quickly until the grass greens up. We need that grass to green up. So fire potential could actually be above normal. The one thing we have working in our favor is grass has been grazed and didn't grow last year, so it's really short, which might help firefighters suppress fire. Long-term drought will persist, though, and then, I think at least at the bare minimum, there's a decreased potential for really hot and dry conditions this summer, just because we're going to that neutral, potentially towards El Nino. So I'll end with CoCoRaHS. Anybody here CoCoRaHS observer? Yeah, one? Oh my goodness. If you live in Kansas and you want a free rain gauge and you promise to report the rain when it actually does fall, sign up for CoCoRaHS. I got brochures in the back there. It's just a rain gauge. It's that standardized rain gauge. You put it out, you measure rain, and you just report it on an app or on the web, and you can compare it to tens of thousands of other people that are all doing the same thing every day in the United States and in different countries. So, and you want to make your weather predictions better for Kansas? Submit CoCoRaHS. That data goes into the forecast models. It goes into the drought products that we look at. It goes into the gridded data sets that are used for payouts. Don't start falsely reporting precipitation, because someone got arrested in southwest Kansas because they went around to all the automated rain gauges and they filled them with putty and stuff because they didn't want to measure rain, hoping they get insurance payouts. Problem is, he messed with federal stations too, and they caught him on camera, and he went to jail for a long time. Come on, just use common sense, guys. But CoCoRaHS, sign up. I got brochures. We'll give you a free rain gauge. You sign up and say you need a rain gauge. And then when I talked about impact reporting, you could do that too. It's free. It's online. You could go just search CMOR, Seymour Condition Monitoring Observation Report. You can scan that QR code. But we got more this year than we normally get, which is nice. But we need a ton more because we had the whole state or not the whole state, 2/3 of the state in drought, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reports for that week period, which is not enough. I need pictures of ponds, pictures of crops not doing well, pictures of grass not greening up. And then you can give some context to it, and you can describe it. It's all anonymous. Once again, use nicely. Don't use it to bash the drought monitor folks, but everyone can see it. The drought monitor folks, we make the drought decisions for the state of Kansas. So we see them, and the public can look at them too. So I appreciate your time today. Hope you guys learned something. Hope I didn't ramble too much about dead people and money, but I appreciate all y'all do. I love beef. I love meat, and I am grateful for you guys that work hard to make that happen. Thank you. Yeah.
In all of your presentation, you never brought up the favorite subject of global warming that our cows are causing.
Oh, cows causing global warming. Well, so I say I eat beans, and I try to get you guys moisture, so I'm contributing too, man. There's a lot of things. Don't ever get caught up in that kind of ridiculous, whether it's contrails, whether it's wind turbines, whether it's cows' methane gas. It's all the same. It's just fluff, right? It's Stick to the science, stick to the facts, and yes, you're right. There is, and I mentioned it, like we are seeing temperatures warm. I mean, the snow that you had even is a different kind of snow the last few weeks. It's a wetter snow, right? A very wet snow. Typically in January, we should be seeing really dry snow. It should be much colder. And so there's a lot of things. We look at overall trends. There's three main things in the state of Kansas. Below normal temperature. That count was going to end wrong. We got temperature, overnight low temperatures are warming on average. They are just, I mean, all the statistics show from all our 100-year stations, every 30-year period, we're warming by about a degree or so every 10 years, which is a lot, overnight lows. We're not seeing the extremes. We're not seeing extreme high, like this summer was really hot and dry. But we didn't break any heat records. We broke like a couple that were like new stations, but like we weren't getting into the 115s on a routine basis. You go back and look at the heat records in the state of Kansas, and it'll terrify you. Like 20 plus days of 100 plus heat, we never had that this year. But that's on the record books. So we're not seeing those heat mainly because we've got a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere because our temperatures are on average warmer. Warm air can hold more moisture. And that's the third thing. So precipitation trends in the state of Kansas. I'm not sure how I got down this global warming thing. Look what you did. It's just that air can hold more moisture. When it rains, it pours, right? We're not seeing those light rain events nearly as much as we used to. We're seeing very heavy rain events. And then what happens is you have a heavy rain event, short duration, a ton of moisture, but then we're seeing a really long dry periods in between. Because we need to have these big storm systems to move through to bring precipitation, and we're seeing less dynamic storm systems because the temperatures are overall warmer. So bigger droughts, but heavier rains in between the droughts, and then and warming temperatures in general. And I also want one last point, is we have to think about what climate is in the state of Kansas and in this region. Climate is the average of the extremes. It's like a pendulum. Climate's in the middle, so it's fantasy land. We got drought over here and flooding over here. Well, we're always one or the other. And the middle is some make-believe land that we did from statistics that we think is reality, and it's not. We're never at normal. And if we are, I'd be really concerned. Like 15 inches and 15 inches, that's weird. Something's not right. So, just little tidbits of information. Yeah. What does irrigation do to it? That's a good question, and something that people have really struggled to assess. It's kind of, I put it in the same pool as cloud seeding, because we know it does impact the weather in that area, but does it actually impact it there, or is it downstream, and how do we measure it? How do we quantify it? It's really, really hard to determine. And because it's over such a big period, it depends on what wind direction is, and depends on the instability of the atmosphere. So we know it does have some enhancements, which is why when we put a weather station out, we don't put it next to an irrigated field because it'll be influenced by that. But we don't have a good assessment of what really the impacts are.
Semi-related, pond building as far as temperature regulation in the atmosphere and runoff prevention down the line.
So pond building, runoff prevention, you know, everything we do has an impact, right? Like I eat beans and I have the result. That's an impact. Like everything we do. By driving here today, you impacted something somehow that could have an effect 10 years from now on the road that we don't even feasibly understand. It could be just a thought you had. We do the same thing with the environment. Everything we do, from every building we put up, to every pond we put in, to every stream we try to manage, we have impacts. What are they? Most of the time we don't know. But we're humans. We manipulate the environment around us. Some of them have had some big cataclysmic impacts downstream and downriver. So just to not answer your question, but answer your question, is we are changing the way water flows, and we're having definitely impact locally. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, Probably not a significant impact, kind of like the irrigation and whatnot. But, it's hard to measure. Sorry. Any other questions? Hey. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Have you ever looked at the forecast since the amount of precipitation since the drained Bonnie Reservoir? How has that ever affected?
It's just like the ponding. The localized, so we got, I don't know how big Bonnie was. I've camped around it, actually, but I don't know how big it was. And it varied, right? Because sometimes it'd be high, sometimes it'd be low. So it's not consistent. But just by living close to lakes in Manhattan area, I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I know what lakes can do to the environment. I know that in December and in January, you will never see the sun in Northeast Ohio unless the lake freezes over, because it's just cloudy all the time. That's how lakes manipulate the environment around it. Watching the Manhattan, Tuttle Lake and Milford Lake, I have seen true, real enhancements from those lakes probably about as many times as I can count on my fingers. Typically only in the winter, because you have to have really cold air aloft. You have to have an exposed surface that's warm to create instability, to create showers or cloud cover, but that's the biggest impact it could provide. So when you drain it, you're probably not really impacting anything. Thanks again. I'll be around a little bit if you have any questions.
Thank you, Jake. You've been good. Yeah, I think we're